The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide like an ocean. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that reached toward the ceiling. Their many eyes, tentacles, and strange limbs all turned toward the center platform, where Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone. Sarah kept her face calm as the voices around her grew louder. The Zilani delegate raised his blue-scaled arm high above his head. "The humans must go," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "They are too dangerous, too unpredictable. They change everything they touch." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sarah looked at the faces around her. Some showed fear. Others showed disgust. A few looked sad, but they stayed quiet. The Kethka representative spoke next. The ancient being's voice sounded like grinding stone. "For 10 million years, this galaxy has known peace. Then these humans arrive, and in just 200 years, everything changes. They terraform worlds without permission. They create new life forms in their laboratories. They build weapons that make us all nervous." More voices joined in. The Crystalline Collective spoke in their ringing chorus about human genetic crimes. The Mwedo, Peaceful Unity, talked about how humans corrupted their youth with strange ideas about individual choice and personal freedom. The Trade Federation complained about human merchants who took risks that made everyone else look bad. Sarah listened to it all. She had heard these complaints before many times. The humans were too fast, too curious, too willing to try new things. They asked too many questions. They didn't follow the old ways that had kept the galaxy stable for so long. Elder Vorthak of the Council raised his massive arm for silence. His species had been part of the Council since its beginning. When he spoke, everyone listened. "We have heard all the evidence," he said slowly. "The vote has been taken. The result is clear." Sarah felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face still. She had known this moment would come. The humans had never fit in well with the rest of the galaxy. They were too different, too eager, too alive. By a vote of 847 to 341, with 156 abstentions, Elder Vorthak continued, "This council finds humanity guilty of aggressive expansion, reckless innovation, cultural contamination, and general disruption of galactic peace. The sentence is immediate expulsion from council space and permanent confinement to the Sol system." The hall erupted in noise. Some beings cheered. Others looked uncomfortable. The younger species delegates looked shocked and angry, but their voices were lost in the crowd. Sarah stepped forward to the speaking platform. The noise died down as everyone waited to hear what the human would say. Many expected anger, threats, or desperate pleading. Some of the older council members had their security forces ready in case the humans tried to fight the decision. Instead, Sarah simply nodded. "Thank you, honored council," she said in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the hall. "Humanity accepts your decision. We will comply fully with your wishes." The silence that followed was complete. Elder Vorthak blinked his large eyes slowly. "You accept?" "Yes," Sarah replied. "We understand that our presence here has caused concern. We never wanted to make anyone uncomfortable or afraid. If our leaving will bring peace to the galaxy, then we will go." Delegate Zexhai of the Talari species stood up quickly. "Ambassador Chen, surely you want to appeal this decision?" "Many of us believe." Sarah held up her hand gently. "Thank you, Delegate Zexhai. Your friendship has meant more to us than you know. But the council has spoken. Democracy means accepting decisions even when we don't like them." The Zilani delegate looked suspicious. "What trick is this? Humans always fight. They never surrender without a struggle." Sarah smiled sadly. "No trick. We're just tired of fighting battles we can't win. Sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to walk away." She looked around the hall one more time, meeting the eyes of friends and enemies alike. "We came to the stars hoping to find our place among you. We learned so much, and we hope we gave something back too. If not, then perhaps it's better this way." Elder Vorthak seemed unsure. "You have 72 hours to remove all human presence from council space. All trade agreements, research partnerships, and military cooperation will end immediately." "Understood," Sarah said. "We'll need a few days to contact all our people and arrange transportation, but we'll be gone within your deadline." As Sarah walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. Behind her, the council members began to whisper among themselves. Many seemed confused by the lack of drama. They had expected the humans to put up a fight, to make the expulsion difficult and messy. Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony watched Sarah leave with narrow eyes. His people had been pushing for this moment for years. Good riddance, he muttered, but even he seemed surprised by how easy it had been. Outside the council chamber, Sarah was met by Delegate HFY and several other young species representatives. Their faces showed worry and sadness. "This is wrong," HFY said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Your people have done more good than harm. The medical advances, the technological innovations, the cultural exchanges." Sarah put a gentle hand on HFY's shoulder. "Change is hard for everyone. Maybe we tried to do too much too fast. The galaxy will find its way without us, but what will you do now?" asked Representative Thane of the new colonies. "Where will you go?" Sarah looked up at the stars visible through the great dome above them. "Humans are good at starting over. We've done it many times before. We'll figure something out." Over the next 3 days, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity quietly packed up and left. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no last-minute legal challenges. Human traders closed their businesses and gave their goods to local partners. Human researchers handed over their work to colleagues and deleted their personal files. Human diplomats said polite goodbyes and boarded their ships. The speed of the departure surprised everyone. The humans had spread across hundreds of worlds, but they moved like they had planned for this moment. Within 72 hours, every human in council space was gone. Elder Vorthak stood in his private chamber, looking out at the empty docking bay where the human embassy ship had been. Something felt wrong about how easy this had been. The humans were known for their stubbornness, their refusal to give up. This quiet acceptance didn't match what the council thought they knew about human nature. His aide, a young Keth Ka, entered the chamber. "Elder, the final reports are in. All humans have left council space. No incidents, no delays, no problems. None at all?" Vorthak asked. "None, Elder. They even left gifts for many of their former colleagues and partners. Food, books, small pieces of art. The humans seemed grateful for their time here." Vorthak nodded slowly, but the feeling of unease remained. "Send word to all sectors. Monitor the borders. I want to know if any humans try to return. Of course, Elder, though, if I may ask, do you really think they'll come back?" Vorthak looked at the empty space where the human ship had been. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think they will. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's what we should be worried about." The Galactic Council had gotten exactly what it wanted. The humans were gone, and they had left quietly with dignity and grace. The galaxy could return to its old ways, its stable traditions, its peaceful existence. But as the days passed and the first reports began to come in from across council space, some members began to realize that getting what you want and getting what you need are two very different things. The humans were gone. Now the galaxy would learn what that really meant. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. The galaxy was quieter now, just as the council had wanted, but quiet wasn't always peaceful. Dr. Melix adjusted his lab equipment for the 3rd time that morning, frustration growing in his chest. The quantum resonance experiment that had seemed so promising just wouldn't work anymore. For 2 years he had worked alongside Dr. Rebecca Martinez from Earth, and together they had made breakthrough after breakthrough. Now alone in his laboratory, even the simplest tests were failing. "Computer, show me the Martinez protocols again," he said to the lab system. The holographic display showed Rebecca's careful notes and procedures. Everything looked correct. Melix followed each step exactly as written, but the results were wrong. Where once they had created stable quantum fields that lasted for hours, now he could barely maintain them for minutes. Melix wasn't alone in his struggles. Across the galaxy, the Frontier Research Initiative was falling apart. The joint research project between 12 species had been the pride of Council science. In just 5 years, they had solved problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries. They had found new ways to travel faster through space, created materials stronger than anything known before, and developed energy sources that seemed almost magical. But now, their progress had stopped. Dr. Caney of the Zilani looked at charts showing their research output dropping by 60%. "It doesn't make sense," she told her assistant. "We have all the same equipment, all the same data. We should be able to continue where we left off." Her assistant, a young Talari named Jax, looked uncomfortable. "Doctor, what if it wasn't just the equipment and data? What if it was the humans themselves?" Dr. Caney frowned. "That's impossible. Science is science. Knowledge is knowledge. It shouldn't matter who discovers it." But deep down, she was beginning to suspect that Jax might be right. The humans had a way of thinking that was different from everyone else. They asked strange questions that led to unexpected answers. They tried things that seemed impossible until they worked. They failed more often than other species, but they also succeeded in ways that seemed like magic. The problems weren't limited to research. Trade Captain Vex of the Peaceful Unity stared at his shipping routes display with growing worry. 3 of his most profitable routes were becoming unreliable. Pirates were attacking more often, and his ships were getting lost in areas that had been safe for decades. What changed? He asked his navigator. The navigator, an elderly crystalline named Resonance of Truth, hummed thoughtfully. The human merchant fleets are gone, Captain. They used to patrol these routes. They knew all the hidden paths through the asteroid fields and the safe stops in dangerous space. Vex felt a chill. Surely we don't need human protection? Our own security forces should be enough. The humans didn't just provide security, Resonance of Truth replied. They created new routes. They found ways to travel through space that others thought was impossible. They built relationships with species we had never even contacted. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. The humans had been everywhere, doing everything, touching every part of galactic life. Now that they were gone, the spaces they had filled were becoming obvious. On the medical station orbiting Kepler 442, Dr. Tiss looked at the latest patient reports with growing alarm. The treatments they had developed with human medical teams were becoming less effective. Diseases that had been under control were coming back stronger than before. I don't understand it, she told her colleague, Dr. Norin. The medications are exactly the same formula. We followed the human procedures exactly. Dr. Norin pulled up a detailed analysis on his screen. Look at this, Thais. The human test subjects provided biological diversity that we can't replicate with just our own species. Their immune systems worked differently than ours. Their genetic variations helped us understand how diseases mutate and adapt. Are you saying we can't continue this research without humans? I'm saying it's going to be much harder. Maybe impossible. The problems were showing up in unexpected places. On the art colony of New Harmony, the great cultural festival that happened every year was smaller and sadder than anyone remembered. The human artists were gone, and with them had gone the wild creativity that had inspired a renaissance across dozens of worlds. Zara, a young Talari sculptor, sat in her studio looking at a half-finished piece. For 3 years, she had worked with a human artist named James, who had taught her to see shapes and colors in completely new ways. His wild ideas had pushed her to create art that amazed everyone who saw it. Now her work felt flat and ordinary. She could still carve stone and shape metal, but the spark was gone. The human way of seeing beauty in strange places, of finding art in chaos, of creating something wonderful from nothing. That was lost. It's not fair, she said to her friend Kex, another artist. They called it cultural contamination, but it felt like cultural awakening to me. Kex nodded sadly. My grandmother says the galaxy was peaceful before the humans came, but I think maybe we confused peaceful with sleeping. Even the younger species were feeling the change. The Talari had been one of the last species to join the council, and their first contact had been with humans. Ambassador Zexai read the reports from her homeworld with growing concern. Their young people were becoming restless and unhappy. The human concepts of individual choice and personal freedom had taken root in Talari culture, but now there was nowhere for those ideas to grow. The humans gave us dreams, Zexai told her aide. Dreams of exploration, of discovery, of becoming more than we were. Now those dreams feel empty. In the council chambers, Elder Vorthak reviewed the quarterly reports from across council space. The numbers were troubling, but he couldn't quite understand why. Trade was down, but not catastrophically. Research was slower, but still moving forward. Security incidents were up, but nothing they couldn't handle. So why did everything feel like it was falling apart? Delegate Krell of the Hegemony was pleased with the reports. You see, he told other council members, the galaxy is adapting. We don't need the humans. These are just temporary adjustments. But privately, even Krell was beginning to notice problems. His own military intelligence reports showed that the areas once patrolled by human forces were becoming more dangerous. The humans had kept many threats at bay without anyone realizing it. The most troubling report came from the Outer Rim territories. A strange sickness had appeared in 3 different systems, affecting silicon-based life forms. The symptoms were unlike anything they had seen before. The medical teams were calling it the Void Plague, and they had no idea how to treat it. Dr. Mellick, still struggling with his quantum experiments, read the medical reports with growing horror. He remembered conversations with Dr. Martinez about theoretical biothreats. She had been working on broad-spectrum treatments for diseases that didn't exist yet. "We should contact the human medical researchers," he suggested to his superiors. "Absolutely not," came the reply. "We'll solve this ourselves, just as we solved problems for millions of years before the humans arrived." But the void plague was spreading, and their solutions weren't working. In her private quarters, Ambassador Zexhai composed a message to the Sol system. It was against council regulations, but she had to try. The message was simple: "We miss you. Please come back." She sent the message and waited for a reply. Days passed, then weeks. The communication channels that had once buzzed with human voices remained silent. The humans had left quietly, just as they had promised. But their silence was becoming louder than any words they had ever spoken. Across the galaxy, beings who had voted for human expulsion were beginning to ask themselves a difficult question. What if they had made a terrible mistake? The galaxy was learning that some things once lost could never be replaced, and the humans were proving to be one of those things. 2 years after the humans left, the galaxy was no longer quiet. It was screaming. General Korath of the Council Defense Force stared at the tactical display in horror. Red warning lights flashed across 3 entire star systems. The hegemony had just launched the largest military attack in galactic history, and the Council's response was falling apart before it even began. "How did they get so close without detection?" Korath demanded. His intelligence officer, a nervous crystalline named Sharp Edge of Knowing, resonated with distress. "Sir, they used the old nebula route through the Horsehead sector. Our sensors couldn't track them through the interference. The nebula route is impossible to navigate," Korath snapped. "No fleet could use it safely." "The humans used it regularly, sir," Sharp Edge replied quietly. "They mapped safe passages through the nebula 5 years ago. When they left, they took their navigation data with them." Korath felt his stomach drop. The hegemony had been planning this attack for years, waiting for the right moment. They had chosen their timing perfectly. Without human patrol fleets and intelligence networks, huge areas of space had become blind spots. The attack was devastating. 3 council colonies were completely destroyed before the defense forces could even respond. When they finally arrived, the hegemony fleet was gone, vanished back into the nebula like ghosts. "What's our casualty report?" Korath asked. 2 million dead, sir. 3 entire colonies wiped out." Korath closed his eyes. In the old days, the humans would have seen this attack coming. Their early warning systems had covered areas that council forces had never bothered to patrol. Their aggressive intelligence gathering had kept everyone informed about hegemony movements. The tactical reports made for grim reading. Council forces had fought bravely, but they fought like it was still the old galaxy, the peaceful galaxy where major wars didn't happen. The hegemony fought like humans had taught them to fight, fast, brutal, and without mercy. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're getting reports of pirate attacks in 17 different sectors. They're hitting trade routes that have been safe for decades." Korath nodded grimly. The pirates were getting bold now that human patrol fleets were gone. The humans had been the galaxy's unofficial police force, chasing down raiders and criminals with a determination that had made piracy almost impossible. Now the pirates were back, and they had learned new tricks. Some of them were using human tactics and strategies, learned from captured data or defected personnel. The irony was bitter. The galaxy was being terrorized by criminals using human military doctrine, but the military disasters were only part of the problem. Reports were flooding in from across council space about the void plague. The mysterious disease that attacked silicon-based life forms was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Theiss stood in her isolation laboratory, looking at tissue samples that made no sense. The void plague didn't behave like any disease she had ever seen. It seemed to rewrite the basic structure of silicon-based life, turning healthy beings into something else entirely. "Have we made any progress on a cure?" asked Dr. Norin through the communication system. "None," Theiss replied, exhaustion clear in her voice. "Every treatment we try just seems to make it stronger. It's like the plague learns from our attempts to fight it." "What about the human research data?" Dr. Martinez was working on theoretical treatments for exactly this kind of biothreat. This felt a stab of frustration. The Council sealed all human research data when they left. We're not allowed to access it. 2 entire species had already been wiped out by the Void Plague. The Crystalline Collective was losing members every day. The silicon mines of the Outer Rim had gone completely silent, and no one knew if any of them were still alive. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions were happening around the clock. The mood was desperate and angry. Species that had supported human expulsion were now blaming each other for the galaxy's problems. This is exactly what the humans wanted, accused Delegate Krell of the hegemony, even though his own people were part of the attacking force. They left us weak and divided so their allies could take over. Ambassador Zexai of the Talari stood up angrily. The humans have no allies attacking us. This is our own fault for pushing away the one species that could have prevented all of this. Elder Vorthak called for order, but his voice lacked its old authority. The ancient being looked older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. We need solutions, not blame, he said weakly. The solution is obvious, said Delegate Prime Frequency of the Crystalline Collective, her voice ringing with desperation. We need to contact the humans. We need their help. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species agreed that the humans should be recalled. Others, led by the remaining hegemony delegates, insisted that asking for help would show weakness. Even if we wanted to contact them, Elder Vorthak said during a brief moment of quiet, our attempts have failed. The Sol System's communication arrays are completely dark. We don't even know if the humans are still there. The truth was more disturbing than anyone wanted to admit. Long-range scans of the Sol System showed signs of massive construction projects, but no responses to any communication attempts. The humans weren't just ignoring the Council. They seemed to have disappeared entirely. Trade Captain Vex reviewed his shipping reports with growing despair. Half of his trade routes were now too dangerous to use. Pirates were everywhere, and the safe passages that humans had discovered were either lost or controlled by criminals. What about the emergency trade protocols? Asked his second officer. They require human verification codes, Vex replied bitterly. Codes that we never bothered to learn because we thought the humans would always be there to provide them. The younger species were suffering the most. They had built their modern societies around human innovations and ideas. Now, without human guidance and support, they were struggling to maintain the progress they had made. On New Harmony, the art colony that had once been the cultural heart of the galaxy, most of the studios stood empty. Young artists like Zara had lost the inspiration that human creativity had provided. The great festivals were canceled. The cultural exchange programs had ended. It's like the galaxy lost its soul, Zara told her friend Kex as they walked through the empty art district. Maybe it did, Kex replied. Maybe the humans were our soul and we cut it out because we were afraid of feeling too much. The military situation was getting worse every day. The hegemony had taken control of 15 systems and showed no signs of stopping. Their forces were using human tactical doctrine combined with alien technology to devastating effect. General Korath received a report that made his blood run cold. The hegemony had somehow obtained copies of human military training manuals and were teaching their officers to think like human commanders. How is this possible? He asked his staff. Black market trade, sir, replied his intelligence chief. When the humans left, some of their data fell into the wrong hands. The hegemony has been studying human warfare for 2 years. It was a nightmare scenario. The galaxy's enemies were using human knowledge and tactics, while the Council forces were stuck with old strategies that had been designed for a peaceful galaxy. But perhaps the most devastating report came from the Outer Rim. A Talari exploration ship had discovered something that changed everything. In a distant system, they found the remains of a massive construction project. The technology was clearly human, but more advanced than anything the humans had shown while in Council space. They were building something, the ship's captain reported to the Council. Something huge, and they finished it before they left. Ambassador Zexai studied the images from the exploration ship. The construction site showed signs of technology that was decades ahead of anything in Council space. The humans hadn't just been living among them. They had been holding back, hiding their true capabilities. Why didn't they use this technology to fight the expulsion order? She wondered. The answer was becoming clear to many Council members. The humans hadn't fought because they had already decided to leave. They had been planning their departure long before the Council vote. They had used their time in galactic society to learn everything they could, and then they had moved on to something better. As reports of new disasters arrived hourly, one question haunted the council chambers. What if the humans hadn't been the problem? What if they had been the solution to problems the galaxy didn't even know it had? The void plague was spreading. The hegemony was advancing. Pirates controlled the trade routes. Research had stagnated. Culture was dying. And somewhere beyond the edges of known space, humanity was building something new, something better, something the galaxy would never be part of. The council had wanted the humans gone. Now they were learning what that really meant. 5 years had passed since the last human ship left council space, and the galaxy was dying. Ambassador HFY stood before the assembled council, holding a datapad that contained the most comprehensive report ever compiled about the galactic crisis. The numbers were worse than anyone had imagined. The hegemony now controls 127 star systems, she announced to the hushed chamber. The void plague has completely wiped out 4 species and infected 12 others. Our trade networks have collapsed by 73%. Piracy incidents have increased by 400%. Research output is down 85% from pre-Exodus levels. The statistics fell like hammer blows on the assembled delegates. Some species had lost so many members that they could barely maintain their seats on the council. The Crystalline Collective had only 3 representatives left from their original delegation of 50. Elder Vorthak looked ancient and broken. The weight of leadership during the galaxy's darkest hour had aged him beyond his years. The question before us, he said slowly, is whether we should formally request humanity's return to council space. The chamber erupted. Half the remaining delegates shouted in favor, while the others argued against showing such weakness. The noise was deafening until Delegate Prime Frequency of the Crystalline Collective rose to speak. Her voice cut through the chaos like a crystal bell. My people are dying, she said simply. Every day more of my kind succumb to the void plague. If admitting we were wrong can save even one life, then I will gladly beg the humans to return. Delegate Krell of the Hegemony, one of the few who still opposed reconciliation, stood up angrily. This is exactly what the humans planned. They left us weak so we would crawl back to them. Then where are they? Demanded Ambassador HFY. If this was their plan, why haven't they contacted us? Why haven't they offered to help? Why have they gone completely silent? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken fears. Long-range scans of the Sol system showed no signs of human civilization. Earth appeared to be undergoing some kind of ecological restoration, but there were no cities, no space stations, no signs of the billions of humans who had once lived there. Dr. Thiss, now the galaxy's leading expert on the void plague, presented her latest findings to the medical subcommittee. The news was devastating. The plague has mutated again, she reported. It's now affecting carbon-based life forms as well as silicon-based ones. At the current rate of spread, we estimate that 40% of the galaxy's population will be infected within 2 years. What about the human research data? Asked Dr. Noren, though he already knew the answer. Still sealed by council order, Thiss replied bitterly. Even in the face of galactic extinction, some council members refuse to admit they need human help. But things were changing. The younger species, led by the Talari, had formed an unofficial coalition pushing for human recall. They had compiled evidence that was impossible to ignore. Researcher Jex, now promoted to head of the Talari Science Council, presented his findings to a packed auditorium. Every major breakthrough in the last 50 years can be traced back to human involvement, he announced. Medical advances, technological innovations, cultural developments, even military strategies. Humans were involved in all of them. The data was overwhelming. In every sector where humans had been present, current crisis management was most effective. Human-designed infrastructure was holding up better under attack. Human-trained personnel had the highest survival rates. Species with the most human cultural influence showed the greatest adaptability to changing circumstances. The evidence is clear, Jex continued. Humanity wasn't just a member of galactic civilization. They were the engine that drove it forward. Even more disturbing were the historical analyses. Council archivists had spent years studying human records, trying to understand how such a young species had become so influential so quickly. What they found changed everything. Archivist Keltar presented his findings to the Council's emergency session. Human historical records show a pattern of survival through adaptation that is unique in the galaxy, he reported. Every other species we know of evolved in relatively stable environments. Humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them. The archival data painted a picture of a species forged by endless challenges: ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, climate changes, predators, diseases, disasters. Earth had thrown everything at humanity, and they had not just survived, but thrived. This is why they adapt so quickly, Keltar explained. Why they innovate constantly, why they seem to thrive in crisis situations. They're not warlike by nature. They're evolved for survival in a hostile universe. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Council. They had expelled the one species that was naturally equipped to deal with the kinds of crises now facing the galaxy. General Korath reviewed the latest military reports with growing desperation. The hegemony was pushing toward the Council core worlds, and defensive efforts were failing everywhere. Traditional galactic military doctrine was useless against an enemy that fought like humans. "We need human tactical advisors," he told the Defense Committee. "Our enemies are using human strategies against us, but we don't understand how to counter them because we never learned to think like humans." "The humans are gone," replied Committee Chair Vexnall. "We have to find our own solutions. Our own solutions are getting millions of beings killed," Korath shot back. "The humans offered to share their military knowledge with us, but we were too proud to learn from such a primitive species." The debate raged for hours, but the military situation was becoming impossible to ignore. A desperate plan began to form. The Council would send an expedition to the Sol system, not to demand or negotiate, but to apologize and beg for help. The expedition would carry formal offers of full reinstatement, unprecedented autonomy, and anything else the humans might want in exchange for their return. The expedition fleet was the largest and most advanced in Council history. They brought gifts from every member species: art, technology, scientific data, cultural treasures. They brought formal apologies written in every galactic language. They brought desperate pleas for forgiveness. Ambassador Zexhai led the expedition personally. As their ships approached the Sol system, she practiced the speech she would give to humanity's leaders. She had rehearsed every word, every gesture, every emotional appeal. But as their sensors swept the inner system, confusion replaced hope. "Ambassador," called the sensor operator, "I'm not detecting any large artificial structures. No space stations, no orbital platforms, no cities on any of the planets." "That's impossible," Zexhai replied. "Earth had a population of 12 billion humans. There were massive industrial complexes throughout the system. The expedition ships moved closer, scanning with every instrument they had. What they found defied belief. Earth showed signs of careful environmental restoration. The polluted areas had been cleaned. Extinct species had been reintroduced. The planet looked like it had been returned to its natural state, as if humans had never lived there at all. Mars was empty. The massive terraforming projects had been dismantled, the equipment removed. The atmosphere returned to its original composition. Jupiter's moons showed no signs of the mining operations that had once extracted resources there. "Where did they go?" whispered Navigator Prime Root of the Peaceful Unity. Deep space scans revealed the answer. In the outer system, they found the remains of construction sites, massive projects that had been completely dismantled and removed. The technology signatures suggested engineering capabilities far beyond anything humans had demonstrated while in Council space. "They were building something," Zexhai said, staring at the scanner displays. "Something enormous, and they took it with them when they left." The expedition spent weeks searching the system, sending messages on every frequency, looking for any sign of human presence. They found automated monitoring stations that recorded their messages but gave no response. They found historical archives that documented human civilization but contained no clues about where they had gone. Finally, they discovered evidence of the truth. Long-range sensor arrays detected faint energy signatures moving toward the galactic rim at impossible speeds. The humans had developed faster-than-light travel technology that surpassed anything in Council space. They left the galaxy, Zexhai realized with growing horror. They didn't just leave Council space, they left the galaxy entirely. The expedition returned with news that shattered what remained of galactic morale. Humanity hadn't been sitting in the Sol system waiting for an apology. They had used their 5 years of exile to build something beyond Council understanding, and then departed for regions unknown. As HFY delivered her report to the Council, one thought haunted her. They had given humanity 5 years to prepare for a future that didn't include galactic civilization. And humanity had used that time to build something better. The galaxy had rejected them, so they had gone somewhere they would be appreciated. The question now was whether that somewhere might include species the Council had never even known existed. We didn't just lose the humans, HFY concluded her report. We lost our future. They're out there, building a better galaxy, and we'll never be part of it. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying the weight of an entire galaxy's regret. It was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every known language, and repeated continuously for months. The Galactic Council's final act was an apology and a plea sent toward the Galactic Rim, where long-range sensors had detected the fading traces of humanity's passage. Ambassador HFY had written the message herself, pouring 5 years of grief and understanding into every word. To our human friends, wherever you may be, we were wrong. We see that now. We thought you were the problem, but you were the solution to problems we didn't even know we had. Please come back. Please forgive us. Please help us save what's left of the galaxy you once called home. The message was broadcast from the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's greatest civilization. The hegemony now controlled half of Council space. The Void Plague had reduced the galactic population by 60%. Most of the great trade routes were controlled by pirates. The age of galactic civilization was ending. Dr. Theiss sat in her empty laboratory, surrounded by equipment that no longer worked properly. The Void Plague had finally reached her homeworld, and she watched through the window as the last evacuation ships departed. Soon she would be alone with her research and her regrets. She had spent the last 5 years trying to recreate the medical breakthroughs she had achieved with human partners. Every attempt had failed. The human way of approaching medical problems, their willingness to try impossible solutions, their ability to see patterns that escaped other minds, couldn't be replicated by following procedures alone. Computer, play personal log 2847, she said to the lab's recording system. Dr. Rebecca Martinez's voice filled the empty room. It was a recording from their last day working together, just before the human exodus. Rebecca was explaining her theory about adaptive immune responses, her excitement clear in every word. The beautiful thing about biological systems, is that they never stop surprising you. Just when you think you understand how something works, life finds a new way to be amazing. This closed her eyes, remembering how Rebecca's strange human optimism had seemed foolish at the time. Now she understood that it had been wisdom. Humans expected the universe to surprise them, so they were always ready to adapt when it did. The recording continued. You know what I'm going to miss most about working here? The way different species see the same problem from completely different angles. We humans bring the chaos, you bring the structure. The crystallines bring the precision. Together we can solve anything. Together. Theiss whispered to the empty room. We could have solved anything together, but there was no more together. The humans were gone, the crystallines were nearly extinct, and the galaxy was dying alone. General Korath stood in the abandoned Council Defense Headquarters, looking at tactical displays that no longer mattered. The hegemony had won. In a few days they would reach the Council homeworld, and organized resistance would end forever. His remaining forces had fought bravely, but they were using century-old tactics against an enemy that fought like humans. The irony was bitter. The galaxy's greatest military minds had been trained by humanity's enemies using humanity's own methods. Sir, his last aide reported, we're receiving a message from Admiral Chen of the Hegemony Fleet. Korath almost laughed. Admiral Chen, obviously a descendant of the humans who had once served in Council space. The Hegemony had recruited human refugees and deserters, learning from them while the Council had remained too proud to admit they needed human knowledge. Put it through, Korath said. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked human, but there was something cold in her eyes that reminded Korath of hegemony ruthlessness. General Korath, this is your final chance to surrender. Lay down your weapons and your people will be treated according to galactic law. What about the Council leadership? Korath asked. They will be held accountable for their crimes against the galaxy, Chen replied, starting with the expulsion of humanity. Korath felt a chill. The hegemony supported human expulsion. That was before we understood what humanity really offered, Chen said coldly. The hegemony learned from their mistakes. The council never did. The communication ended, leaving Korath alone with the truth. The hegemony hadn't just learned human tactics, they had learned human values. And from their perspective, the council's treatment of humanity had been a crime worth punishing. On Earth, in the restored gardens where London had once stood, automated systems detected the incoming message from the Galactic Council. The message was recorded, analyzed, and filed in the vast archives that documented the history of humanity's time among the stars. No reply was sent. The artificial intelligence that managed Earth's restoration project noted the message in its daily log. Contact attempt 1247 from former Galactic Council received. Content apology and request for aid. Action taken. Message archived under historical interest only. Current priority: complete ecosystem restoration ahead of schedule. Earth was healing. The scars left by 12 billion humans and their industrial civilization were fading. Native species thought extinct for centuries were thriving in carefully managed habitats. The planet was becoming more beautiful than it had ever been, but it was empty of human life. In the archives, stored in quantum memory systems that would last for millions of years, lay the complete record of humanity's time in galactic civilization. Every friendship made, every discovery shared, every cultural exchange, every moment of wonder when humans first walked among the stars. All of it preserved perfectly, like flowers pressed between the pages of a book. And buried deep in those archives was the real reason humanity had left so quietly. They had known this day would come. Human psychologists and sociologists had studied galactic civilization for 200 years. They had seen the patterns that led to stagnation, the fear of change that eventually destroyed every great society. They had watched species after species retreat into comfortable traditions that slowly became comfortable graves. Humanity had tried to share their gift for adaptation, their talent for seeing opportunities in chaos, their ability to thrive in impossible situations. Some species had embraced these gifts and flourished. Others had feared them and demanded their removal. The humans had accepted their expulsion not out of weakness but out of wisdom. They had learned what they could from galactic civilization, shared what they could of themselves, and then moved on when it became clear that the galaxy valued stability more than survival. We came to the stars hoping to find our place among you, Ambassador Sarah Chen had said in her final speech to the council. Those words were recorded in the archives. Along with the rest of that speech, words that revealed the true depth of human understanding. We learned that some species grow stronger through challenge, while others grow weaker. We learned that diversity of thought is more valuable than diversity of form. We learned that the universe is vast enough for many different ways of life, and we learned that sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to walk away and let others find their own path. The humans had left to find species that shared their values: exploration over safety, growth over comfort, adaptation over tradition, and based on the energy signatures detected by Council long-range sensors, they had found exactly what they were looking for. Beyond the galactic rim, in regions the Council had never explored, humanity was building something new. Not just cities or space stations, but entire civilizations populated by species that had been waiting for someone to show them how to thrive in the chaos of an ever-changing universe. Ambassador Zexhai sat in her empty office, writing her final report as the hegemony fleet approached the Council homeworld. She had spent 5 years studying human culture, trying to understand what the galaxy had lost. Her conclusions were heartbreaking in their clarity. Humanity wasn't just another member species, she wrote. They were the catalyst that could have transformed our entire civilization. They offered us evolution, and we chose extinction. She paused, listening to the sound of evacuation sirens in the distance. Soon the great council chambers would be empty, the delegates scattered, the dream of galactic unity dead forever. The humans understood something we never did. She continued writing. They knew that civilizations, like living beings, must grow and change or die. They tried to teach us how to grow. We chose to die instead. Her final words were both an epitaph and a warning for any species that might someday find the archives. We had the chance to learn from the galaxy's greatest teachers. We had the opportunity to join the galaxy's greatest explorers. We had the privilege of calling the galaxy's greatest friends our equals. And we threw it all away because we were afraid of what we might become. As the hegemony fleet entered orbit around the Council homeworld, Sci-Fi transmitted her report toward the galactic rim, hoping it might somehow reach the humans who had given her species hope for the future. The transmission joined thousands of others, messages of regret, apologies, and desperate pleas, all traveling toward the edge of known space, where humanity had vanished into the dark between galaxies. None of the messages received replies. On Earth, the automated systems continued their work, restoring the planet to its natural state.